Hi, hello and welcome. It's Pip here from queenpipcards.com. Thanks ever so much for tuning in to me today. Today is my next part in my water and ink series, and today we are looking at a different kind of inks. So not the kind of inks that you find in one of these ink pads. We have got our craft ink, which is a pigment ink. We have got our chalk marker, which is, funnily enough, a chalk ink. And this is also permanent, and our craft ink is permanent. So I'm looking at the permanent inks these days that we've got. We've looked at Versamark before. We will continue to look at Versamark. Again, not in this one. We'll do another episode with some more Versamark, pulling it all in together. But today I just wanted to focus on these. So I have used my terracotta tile water-based ink, because we know that opposites attract. Okay, so that's a water-based ink, and I have stamped on this card in terracotta tile, and then I've painted it with this chalk marker. So I'm going to do a little version of that, and then we're going to look at the craft ink. Okay, so I have stamped this again in a different frame this time. I just masked it off and stamped this in, because I just wanted to show you how easy it was to use your chalk marker. You don't have to be a Picasso or anything like that to work with these. I'm going to do different flowers than I did last time. So I'm going to pull these ones in, and I want to show you that you can just lay down the ink very simply, just following the lines, painting inside the lines of the stamp that you've done. Okay, so we did this a couple of weeks ago now for my one of my classes for my team and my customers. We did a craft along with Queen Pip, and this was one of the cards that we made. You might have seen it up on my Facebook page, and I really enjoyed doing this one, and it was one of the ones that really sparked the imagination of some of my customers, and they've come back and shown me some of their work that they've done with it, and I've loved that. And you can get, you know, more fancy and do more things with this, so I just wanted to share a couple of those other things that you could do. So first of all, you need to go around. Now it does take some time, because obviously you're painting just in the individual things. You can't sort of scrub all over it. So you do need to take a little bit more care than you would say with a blend, where it doesn't matter if you go from one petal to the next. This one it will matter, because you won't have that defined stamped line between the two petals. So it's worth taking the time to do that. So I will speed this up, and you'll hear a bit of silence whilst I'm doing that, while I do the next flower. Actually, I might just leave it like that, because that might be enough for us to just do this technique with. So you need to go back and do a second coating over the ones that you've just done. You'll see that some are whiter than others, and that's just dependent on how much ink you've laid down, how much it's soaked into the cardstock. So you'll know which ones you need to go back over, and you can do those again. You can do as many layers as you like of this, really. You could just keep going if you want to, but it gets to a point where it is just white, so you don't need to do too many of them. Okay, so once you've got all your ink down, the great thing is that these are, this is technically an ink that's a permanent ink that you've laid on top of the paper. You need to make sure you don't scrub at it so you don't pill the paper. But once that dries, it's permanent, and then you can go back over it, and if you wanted to, you could use your watercolour pencils or something else that is a dry ink. I wouldn't recommend using a wet ink, but you could go back in definitely with a dry ink. So if we go back in with our Cajun Craze, we could go back in and we could just add back in some lines. And to just scrub this off on a bit of cardstock. Okay, just to get that, make it a bit softer. Here we go. So you can go back in and you can put those lines back in if you want to, that you had in there before that we covered up. As long as you can remember where they are, or you could look at the stamp set to put them back in. And this just makes it slightly less like bright white with no sort of bits on it. it's up to you whether you want to do it or not. I like both. But you do need to let it dry first so that you can get that sort of line going in gently. There. So can you see now how I've added back in just a little touch of that, so it looks almost like it's the same colour. So it looks like you've got those stamped elements from the stamp set. So if you look at the actual stamp itself, you can see that there are these lines. Oh, now you're seeing my reflection of my lights there. But you can see there's these lines. So we've just put those back in. Okay, so that's just something that you can do, or you can just leave them white, as I did here. So here I did 2 tones of white. I did double layer of white ink on this one, and then single layer on here to give a little bit of a different look. So there's a couple of things that you can do with your white ink, which is your chalk marker. Obviously you can use it on any colour, looks great on black. And then I was just going to pop that up on there and stamp a little sentiment on some Whisper White cardstock. I'm going to use my terracotta tile, wherever I put it, there we go. So we'll use terracotta tile, pop that down there for you. Always need for you cards at the moment. So then using the classic label punch, just punching out that for you there, like so. It's going to come across the edge there. We're going to pop just a smidge of both ribbon, I think actually. I like both of them together. So I'm going to attach them to the back of my little sentiment. That's the word I'm looking for. Sentiment pip, that's the word. Label. Sometimes I call it a label. So we'll pop that on there like that. And then this is tear tape, which is fab for all things ribbon. Just pull that off. So I wanted it that way around, didn't I? So, like so, and you can always use your snips afterwards. That's my view, to just finish off your ends. Do you see what I mean? So don't worry about your ends until you've got it actually on here, like so. And then I'm just going to chop that off at the end once I've worked out where I'm going to put it. So this I'll put on, I'm going to put it on flat because we like to send things through the post. Don't want this to be too damaged by being bent because it is a nice detailed die. So pop that on there. It fits beautifully on our cardstock. Really nice. Like so. Make sure it's straight. Yep, not bad. And then somewhere I had a strip. Here we go. Just a little strip of the papers in gold. So I like a little bit of gold just to highlight that white. So snip that off at the same angle. Do you see what I mean? So we're just going to layer gold ribbon and sentiment all together. Okay, so pop that down there. Then I'm going to chop off about here. And then that's going to see as if it's literally coming off the edge of the card there, but this is going up on dimensionals. And then we're going to add some bling, because obviously we need bling. But it's a nice sort of calming card because of the white. I think the white's just quite gentle on the eye, even though it's, you know, bright in one sense. It just highlights that part of the card. There we go. And then a little tiny one of these little Jimmy Watsits. Put a little one on, I think. That matches with the sentiment, a good size for the sentiment. There we go. There we go. So that's the first of our cards today, and that's matching the, that's working with the chalk markers, which you can buy individually. So, you know, it's great. You can just grab one and you're off, basically. Really quick and easy, but has a really nice, really quite vibrant look to it. Okay, so now we're going to move on to my next card, and for this one I need my Stamparatus, so I will see you in a min. Okay, so welcome to my part 2 of this episode, where we're looking at the permanent inks that we have that are white. So we've looked at our chalk marker just a minute ago, and now we're looking at our craft stamping pad. Now you can get the ink pad and you can get a at the moment you can't get the re-inker, but you can get the craft pad, and it is a very sticky pad. I'm not going to put my finger in it because it is really sticky, even stickier than the Versamark ink that we looked at the other week, and it's the same kind of thing. It's a pigment ink, so it is has that sticky quality to it, and this is this does need to be heat set. Okay, so you need to heat set this ink. It's the only ink we have to heat set. Versamark you can use and it will dry eventually, but obviously if you want to use embossing powder with it, then you heat set the embossing powder. But for this, the actual ink does require heat setting, whatever you're using it on. Card, paper, fabric, whatever. You can use this on fabric, you can use it on wood, you can use it on all kinds of different mediums, because it is or material should I say, because it is that permanent pigment ink, so it has more density to it. It doesn't absorb into the porous fibers as much, so that's why you can use this on different things. So I'm going to be using Abstract Impressions, which is one of the only two-step stamping I have that actually stamps on top of each other, and you'll see why in a moment. I'm not actually going to show you what my card is supposed to look like, because we will need to go through this in steps, and I will need to show it to you at the different stages for you to understand what I did. Okay, and then I'll show you what it looks like at the end. So you'll get the understanding as you go on. So the first thing you need to do is you need to have a Stamparatus, and you need this because this ink will absorb into the black cardstock or any dark colour cardstock or any cardstock that you use. It won't absorb so much as it won't adhere quite as well as any other ink that you might have. So our normal ink will just stamp straight in and be absorbed by the fibres, that's it. But because of the pigment in this, it doesn't have that tendency to do that. So this one, as you ink it up, you'll see that it's really quite sticky and quite tricky to get it onto your an even coating. So you need to just make sure you can get an even coating going, and if you don't manage it, don't worry, because that's why you have your stamping platform. So you're going to stamp that down, lift it off, and you'll see that you can see the black through that. Okay, now if I just kept going on this, all that actually happens is you start to re-lift off the ink that you've just put down. Okay, you might add a little bit extra to some places, but if you kept going, most of the time you will start to lift off the ink that you've put down before, and it'll get a little bit better, but it won't get great. So what you have to do is, between each setting you have to heat set it. So to heat set it, I'll close that up. You literally take your heat gun and you heat set it on the lowest setting for a long time, until you can start to see it starts to smoke almost. I know it sounds dreadful, but it does. So you do. I'm not going to sit here and do it, but it just you get it to a point where it'll get quite hot. So just wait, leave it to cool down for a minute, and then just check it. And if you can still get white on your fingers, it hasn't set. So you keep going. Eventually, it will dry. Okay. And you'll be able to run your fingers over it. It'll almost have like a textured surface to it. So it almost lays down a coating, almost like a paint coating. Okay. So then what I have decided to do, you don't have to do this, you could leave it like that and just stamp it. But I then started moving my paper around and doing different things. So the first thing I did was I wanted to add a second flower. So I think this is the right, yes, so I added a second flower. So you can see I've got all like lines all over, because you have to make sure that you can go back to the same place every time, because you need to keep re-inking over the top. So I could add more white to that now if I wanted to, and it would get whiter again. Okay, or I could put a second one in next to it and add another one, and see how where it's been before, heat set before, that's now really come up quite white. So if I put this back to its original position and put another one on, you'll see the whole of that flower now turn white. And that's because you're going back over the heat set area. Let's do that. See how much whiter that's gone? Can see the compared to the other one. So you keep going over and you keep doing that, and you keep heat setting. And then I moved it around. I put one underneath each other, and eventually I got to the point where I had it looking like this. Okay, and I literally just moved it around this way. So I added some lines here, so I'd have one that lined up here, put my magnets down, put another one in, you know, various different ways in which I did it. But every time in between you have to heat set it. Okay, and then eventually you get it to this point where it's not bad, you know, it's pretty white really, considering the first attempt, you know, compared to the first attempt, it goes really quite nice and white. And then what I decided was we obviously need to do that two-step stamping piece. So I've put the one that matches. So there's a flower piece that sits inside the other flower piece. So these three pieces, you can go 1, 2, 3, but I've just gone 1 and 2 for these. Okay. So that's how I've done these. I've just done these two, and I chose my blueberry bushel, and now we're going to see how well this works. It might need clear embossing on top of it because it is a pigment coating, so we'll just see. But you never know. It's going to look cool, I think, because blueberry bushel goes so nicely with white and black. There we go. That's cool, huh? So it doesn't quite line up because it's not supposed to. That's the whole point of it. And I think it probably does need to have some coating on top of it. But we'll give it a go, and we'll finish the rest and we'll see how it looks. So I don't know if you can see that, but can you see that the ink is quite shiny, even on the ones we did at the beginning? So that's because it's sitting, as I said, remember I said it was sort of like a cover. It sort of had a cover sheen to it, the ink. So we need to set that ink now. And the only way you can do that really is by adding clear embossing powder on the top of it. And because it's sitting on top of a sticky substance, the ink itself is not dry, and therefore the ink will take the powder as if it's Versamark. And can you see now how that blue just sort of pops out from the white now that it's all nice and clear embossed? So then I decided it needed to be cut down a little bit, so I just trimmed it down to 9.5 by 13.9. Put it onto a whisper white background like so, which really helps to sort of bring that alive and pop that out from there. And then I have a little blueberry bushel sentiment which I want to pop just over here. Pretty in the blueberry bushel, isn't it? Really pretty. But of course you know that I love my lovely lipstick, so I couldn't stop at doing my blueberry bushel. I had to do a lovely lipstick version as well. So that's this one, and here's another sentiment from the stamp set. So I don't know, I like both of them. This one I used the Whisper White crinkled seam binding, which is lovely, soft, and this one obviously the grosgrain, no, mini grosgrain, which you can get. You can get that in Lovely Lipstick as well if you prefer. I just wanted to show you a different look. So that's our two with the craft stamping pad, the Whisper White pigment ink, those two, and then with our water-based inks on top, and then set with the clear embossing powder. And then these two we did earlier. Well, this one we did earlier, but I showed you both, using the Stampin' chalk marker in white, again permanent. So those are your two options in terms of white. Obviously you can also just heat emboss in white like this if you want to, but I thought I'd show you some different ideas of doing things with Whisper White ink. So there we go, all 4 projects that I've shared with you today with our water and ink series, and as I say, hopefully you're enjoying this. All of them can be found on my YouTube or on my blog, and you know, if you have any more ideas of things that you're interested in, or if you've got any questions that you don't understand something that I've put in my tutorial, then please, you know, please feel free to ask me a question and I will try and answer it. You can put comments in over on my blog or comments over on my YouTube channel. Here underneath in the description, underneath here you can add comments, and I always try and answer them as best I can. So thanks ever so much for watching. If you fancy any of the things that you've seen today, then I will also put links to all of these in my store, so you can just click and buy. Provided that you live in the UK or in the European Stampin' Up countries. Alrighty, have a good day. I will see you next week for my next instalment, and then just to give you a little bit of a heads up, in May we're talking folds, all different kinds of paper folds for cards, including one sheet wonder folds and all those kind of things. So next month we're talking folding paper and how best to do that, and that will be a new series that I will start. So hopefully you're enjoying these, and I will see you again soon. Thanks ever so much for watching. You take care now. Pip here from queenpipcards.com. Bye.